2 years in a row.
First tonight, today is the start of the Republican National Convention. We got a live look now at the convention underway right now in Milwaukee. Former President Donald Trump has officially been selected for the Republican nomination for that election. Now, U.S. Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, also been announced as the Republican vice presidential nominee. Trump made the announcement on his social media app, Truth Social. Vance is a Middletown, Ohio native who was endorsed by Trump during his Senate run back in 2022. Governor Mike DeWine issuing a statement on the announcement, congratulating Vance, saying in part, quote, J.D. is a father, military veteran, best-selling author, and has served Ohio well as our U.S. Senator. In addition, J.D.'s unique life story will resonate well with Republicans and independent voters across the country. Coming up in 15 minutes, we dive into how his political career has led him to this point. Now, Vance is expected to speak Wednesday before former President Trump gives the headline speech Thursday, all at the RNC. Alan Lashar brings us an update from Milwaukee.
Trump supporters are still trying to comprehend how close he was to being killed on Saturday during that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. In one of his first interviews since the shooting, Trump tells the New York Post the near-death experience has him rethinking how he'll address the crowd here in Milwaukee. I had all prepared an extremely tough speech, really good, all about the corrupt, horrible administration, he said, then suddenly added, but I threw it away. More than once, Trump told the outlet, I'm supposed to be dead. And on this image seen around the world, a lot of people say it's the most iconic photo they've ever seen, Trump said. They're right, and I didn't die. Usually you have to die to have an iconic picture. Everyone involved in this election feeling the dynamics shift, listening to calls to turn down the temperature of partisan division.
I think that we have crossed a watershed. We were right at the brink of falling apart as a country and potentially drifting towards a civil war.
Today's convention theme is Make America Wealthy Again, with a focus on the economy. And among the dozens of speakers are Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. In Milwaukee, I'm Atrell Nashar.
And Ohio State Senator Neeraj Antani is at the RNC as we speak. We had a chance to speak with him live this morning on your day ahead of the convention. We asked what he's seeing following the assassination attempt of the former president and how this has impacted the convention.
I think that, Saturday was certainly an inflection point for the country in our politics, in how we conduct our politics. And, I think that I've never felt the Republican Party unified more than I do today going into the RNC. And I think after this, we'll join President Trump to try to unify the country. And I think that's very important.
Take a look at what happened.
Now, Antani added the assassination attempt struck an extra sense of patriotism in all the delegates at the convention. Now, the kickoff of the convention comes as 2 days after that attempted assassination of Trump. Saturday's attack is the latest in a long list of violent acts directed toward political figures. Eli Burgett speaking to criminal justice and political science experts. So how can the assassination attempt impact the future of the nation here?
Well, with hundreds of thousands of Americans consuming political media, the vast majority of them are against political violence. But experts I spoke with today say the small minority still persists. Today, I learned that the attempted assassination of former President Trump may call for significant changes both federally and socially.
We're talking about a strong consensus on that of 80 to 85, between 85 and 90% of Americans would say no, that's not acceptable. You're really talking about a small number of people who think it would be okay.
In the wake of the attack against former President Trump, many expect the United States Secret Service to add greater security to public appearances for both Trump and President Biden ahead of the November election. However, this may be easier said than done due to several law enforcement entities struggling to find new recruits to fill empty roles. Coming up at 6:30 on Fox 45, the call for an overall societal shift to emphasize that political violence has no place in our democracy. Back to you.
Eli, thank you. And as he just mentioned, local law enforcement have a big role in security detail for political rallies. So Lydia Bice sat down with Vandalia Police Chief to talk about past rallies at Dayton International Airport. So what all goes into making sure these rallies are safe?
Adam, a lot of our viewers at home might not realize how closely our local law enforcement agencies work with the Secret Service when political rallies come to town. And that's why I sat down with Vandalia Police Chief Kurt Althouse today to kind of learn more about the behind the scenes of these rallies that often take place at Dayton International Airport.
So a lot of times there will be many briefings, several briefings leading up to the event, and the Secret Service will designate each department or officers that are participating, what their role is.
So what did Chief Althouse say about the 2016 rally when a guy rushed the stage toward former President Trump?
So Chief Althouse wasn't in attendance at that 2016 rally at Dayton International Airport, but he says that's the exact type of thing that his department and fellow law enforcement officials are trained for, and that they were so grateful no one was injured in that incident. Now, coming up on Fox 45 at 6:30, you'll hear an exclusive interview with a retired Secret Service agent who shares his thoughts on how agents handled Saturday's assassination attempt against former President Trump. Back to you.
Lydia, thank you. Also, a federal judge has now dismissed the classified documents case against Trump. The judge says the appointment of the special counsel in the case, Jack Smith, violated the Constitution. The judge also criticizing the special counsel's role for encroaching on the legislative authority of Congress. Now, Smith had charged the former president of mishandling top secret documents after leaving the White House, accusing Trump of endangering national security. Smith can appeal that decision. All right, let's give you a live look now at the AES outage map, where more than 2,600 people are still without power. That number once over 41,000 yesterday with the strong storms and winds. So let's go over to Natalie. Now, these warm temperatures certainly fueling the fire here.
Yeah, heat advisory in effect still through 8 p.m. Along with that, we have more storms. I did a Facebook Live earlier today talking about the storms, and someone had commented, I wish these would hold off at least until our power comes back on again. So folks still without power after yesterday's storms, and now we have some more storms firing up across the area. Taking a look at what we do have further off to the north through parts of Sydney. Now, these are below severe limits, but in Sydney, we got a heavy rain shower right over you, potentially some gusty winds about to move into Urbana, heavier rain as well. Severe thunderstorm warning. This is for far southeastern Clinton County, moving out of Clinton County right now. Potentially some damaging wind gusts with that particular storm. But our next system that we're watching is now off in Iowa, bringing severe weather. You could see tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings. This is potentially going to bring us the chance for some thunderstorms overnight, early tomorrow morning. We do have a low end risk for severe storms. Level 2 threat for our northwestern counties, level 1 threat for the rest of the area. It does look like this will be weakening as it makes its way in, but coming up, I'll time it all out for you and talk about what we're expecting.
Well, local grandmother has now been indicted on charges after her 5-year-old grandson died from an overdose. 56-year-old Stephanie Shanks was indicted on 5 counts, including involuntary manslaughter. Back in March, medics responded to the DeSoto Bass apartments. They say they found 5-year-old Charles Brown dead. Investigators say that child had gotten into fentanyl and other drugs that were left around the apartment, which resulted in his death. Prosecutor Matt Heck called the situation reckless and careless.
The overdose of this little Charles Brown is simply tragic, senseless, and avoidable. It simply should have never happened. While a grandmother is supposed to be watching this child, the child dies of an overdose, 5 years of age.
Now, Shanks faces a maximum sentence of 11 years on those charges. She's set to be arraigned next Tuesday. Tonight, we also know the name of the woman who died after a car crashed into a RTA pole yesterday morning. The Montgomery County coroner says 36-year-old Erin Washington died just after 6:40 on Salem Avenue. Investigators say Washington lost control of her vehicle, which went sideways into the pole. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office is handling that investigation. A court battle over an Ohio law restricting medical procedures for transgender youth kicking off today in a Franklin County courtroom. It was a day filled with emotional testimony on the delay of House Bill 68. It's currently on hold under a temporary restraining order until Common Pleas Court Judge Michael Holbrook deems whether to grant a preliminary injunction. Now, in a brief opening statement, Attorney General Dave Yost's assistant acknowledged the impact of the bill.
We recognize that these minor plaintiffs are dealing with very difficult reality, and they deserve to be treated with respect and understanding. But the state of Ohio has a duty to protect all of Ohio's children. It has to take into consideration the health and the safety of all of its citizens.
Now, Yost's office is expected to defend the bill later this week. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance announced as former President Trump's running mate. Coming up, we dive into Vance's background and how he ended up at this point.
Plus, I'm tracking more storms overnight and for the day tomorrow. I'll time it all out for you. That's coming up. You're watching Dayton 24/7 now.
Sponsored by the
and 20th. Details at jamesfree.com.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
This porch was no match for the wind gusts blowing out of a severe thunderstorm last night south of Birmingham. Here's a bolt of lightning in Panama City, Florida that starts high in the sky, passes between lower clouds, then strikes land on the other side of the water. And this field of sunflowers in South Carolina was giving off good vibes during sunset.
For more content like this, like the National Weather Desk on Facebook.
Middletown's own J.D. Vance, the junior senator from Ohio who grew up here in the tri-state, is the pick to be the Republican nominee for vice president. James Pilcher has been digging into Vance's background, details how the Middletown native from a troubled home came to be atop the political landscape.
J.D. Vance was born in Middletown 39 years ago, raised in his grandmother's home here on McKinley Street. His family came from East Central Kentucky, moving north to get higher-paying manufacturing jobs at Middletown's then-booming steel plant. Vance declined interviews through his Senate spokesman ahead of his selection, and so did his family members in Middletown. UC political science professor David Niven says Vance's ascent from such humble beginnings to VP candidate is remarkable.
You know, I think the Vance story is a fascinating one, and it is, you know, it's going to be in the textbooks for a long time about, you know, how one can create a political career almost overnight.
Vance first shot into the national spotlight in 2016 when his memoir Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis, hit bestseller lists. The book tracks his family's troubled history dating back to the Appalachian foothills of Kentucky, his mother's issues with opioid addiction, as well as his reasons for the economic decline of working-class America. He also chronicled how he made it despite those tough odds, primarily through the tough love of his grandparents, especially his grandmother Bonnie Mamaw Vance. In fact, he took his grandparents' last name after high school as a sign of respect. The book also says many of the problems facing the white working class are their own fault, with Vance writing the so-called hillbilly culture can sometimes be his own people's worst enemy. A 2020 Netflix movie based on his book included major stars such as Amy Adams and Glenn Close and was directed by Ron Howard. It came out a year before Vance threw his hat into the ring to run for the U.S. Senate. Vance was seen as an outsider and was not even leading the polls for most of the 2022 primary. That changed when Trump endorsed Vance, a surprising move given Vance strongly criticized Trump when promoting his book 6 years earlier. In fact, he called Trump an idiot and loathsome during the 2016 campaign. But thanks to that endorsement, Vance won first the GOP primary and then the Senate seat in 2022, and has since become a vocal advocate for Trump's policies. Cedarville University history professor Mark Clausen says it was both a political calculation, but also a realization by Vance that the two had more in common than they thought.
He felt it expedient at the time, I think, to oppose Trump. And once Trump becomes more popular, he finds it expedient to go with Trump. And that makes perfect sense to do that, to the best of your ability.
In his first 2 years, Vance also bucked other traditional Republicans in the Senate, pushing for major railroad reforms following the disaster at East Palestine and calling for an end to the U.S. funding to Ukraine in its war against Russia. And he's mirrored Trump's positions on curbing free trade, once a big GOP policy position. Vance told me in May that he wasn't actively campaigning to be Trump's pick and that he had not yet spoken to the former president about it.
Certainly, as I said, I think it's important that we reelect him. If he asked me, I would certainly have to think about it seriously because I do want to help him. And I want to help him govern the country successfully. I want to help him become president. But I think that there's a really important role that I can play in the United States Senate.
All right, let's give you a live look from our Eco-Plumber Skycam over I-75 near Miamisburg. Off and on, pretty strong rain the last couple hours here.
Yeah, a little quieter now, and now it's just hot and humid. That's what's left in its place. But we still have a couple of showers around. After thunderstorms quickly fired up earlier this afternoon, had a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings. Now we have some lingering showers through parts of Shelby County into Logan, even Champaign County. A few showers lingering around those areas as well. Heat advisory still technically in effect until 8 p.m. this evening for counties along and south of I-70. Now with this heat advisory, heat indices climbing upwards of 100 degrees possible, and we were close to that for some of us earlier into the day. But thanks to the rain, we have cooled off a bit. In fact, hanging out in the 70s and 80s, 80 in Dayton, 81 in Troy, but off to the north, 88 up in Wapakoneta, factoring in the humidity. This is what it feels like. It feels very sticky. 97 is what it feels like in Salina right now. Feels like 96 in Wapakoneta. Still feels like the 80s for our central counties, but other than that, it's just very humid. You'll step outside and you'll feel that mugginess out there. So storms across the area, those are falling apart, but off to our northwest, we're watching our next weather maker, which is right now bringing active weather, severe storms through parts of Iowa. Now, this complex of storms is going to ride its way through Illinois into Indiana and potentially impact us here in the Miami Valley. The good news is that it will be weakening as it makes its way in. That being said, we still do have a risk for some strong to severe storms. Notice a level 3 threat for severe storms for northern Illinois, including the Chicago area. The majority of our area is under a level 1 threat. Northwestern counties under that level 2 threat for severe storms as that system continues to make its way in and starts to weaken. So let's time it out for you. We'll stay pretty quiet overnight, but this is indicating around 3 a.m. this complex of storms entering the area, potentially posing a risk for mainly damaging wind gusts. There's a non-zero risk for a tornado, but that risk is very low too. Again, this will be weakening as it makes its way in, but you do want to have a way to get those weather alerts overnight into early tomorrow morning. A few storms lingering by around 5 a.m. So right now it does look like from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. best chance for those storms. And then we start to see another chance for storms firing up tomorrow afternoon and evening. Another chance for some thunderstorms heading into our Wednesday as well. This will be the cold front swinging its way through, which will eventually bring us some much more comfortable air. So dew points in the 70s right now. It is very sticky, but I was talking about that cold front. So once that cold front arrives, it will start to drop our temperatures and that humidity back to refreshing conditions by the end of this week, with our temperatures that will be back down into the upper 70s in the lower 80s. So we will start to feel a whole lot better. We got to get through these next couple of days, but the chance for some storms both Tuesday, Wednesday. And again, we're tracking that potential for storms overnight. Feeling a whole lot better with lows even in the upper 50s Thursday and Friday.
Well, Huber Heights' mayor taking to social media to announce the official time of the groundbreaking of the Buc-ee's. Mayor Jeff Gore says the official start date of construction scheduled for August 8th. Mayor Gore also says they're hopeful for a late 2025 opening. This will mark the first Buc-ee's location in Ohio. Well, it has been nearly 23 years now since a bride-to-be vanished just 3 weeks before her wedding day. Now, more than 2 decades later, we are investigating what happened to 28-year-old Nikki McCowan. She was last seen at a laundromat in Richmond, Indiana on July 22nd, 2001. 5 months later, Nikki's car was found at an apartment complex here in Dayton, but to date, she has never been found. And while police had 3 viable suspects, they still don't know what happened to her. Our podcast team spent a year going over documents, evidence, interviewing detectives, and those closest to Nikki. The season trailer for Missing Nikki McCowan is out this morning, and the first 2 episodes of that podcast, those drop on July 22nd. You can scan the QR code on your screen right there, download or search for Missing Nikki McCowan in Apple, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you use. It's all there. Make sure you subscribe to the series so you can always know when a new episode is available. Well, kids of all ages, they need the right tools to make the most of their education, and that is why we are partnering once again with Crayons to Classrooms all next week to provide school supplies for local students as they go back to school. Help us stuff the bus. We're going to have that bus parked outside our Miamisburg studio ready for your donations. Christmas obviously still months away, but that is not stopping a local city. Coming up, the plans Piqua has in store for Christmas in July. You're watching Dayton 24/7 now.
Here's what I know.
of the drama.
The Dayton 24/7 Now News app, brought to you by the Jeff Schmidt Auto Group.
Well, we're 163 days away from Christmas. Nathan Edwards shows us how Piqua is celebrating this week.
It's July, it's super hot, but you know what? Some people still love to enjoy the Christmas spirit year round, and there's an opportunity to do so this week in Piqua. You can head out for the third Thursday of Christmas in July sidewalk sales and open houses happening Thursday, July 18th, starting at 10:45 a.m. Now, it's a great way to go downtown. They have merchants having sidewalk sales specials, merchandise sneak previews, and other activities to get you in the holly jolly spirit. I'm hoping maybe Santa Claus will be out there as well. Great way to support local businesses, maybe shop a little early, buy a few gifts